The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Renato could use that somehow. Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy. And that he had a clever plan. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Or so Lapino had told him over the far speaker anyway. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? The Ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. In a swirl of newly remembered knowledge, he needed to focus.
Lapino would betray him. But now Renato knew that. What would Lapino do if he knew that Lapino was going to betray him? Well, he concocted a crazy scheme, didn't he? That used Lapino's betrayal against him and it would blow up in space. Maybe he was overthinking this. Well, that would be a first.
Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him.
On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lapino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper? Lapino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy.
He sure had. Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right, Lapino was a traitor. But still, he was good company. Say, how are you guys fixed for life insurance?
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds. He didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones. But no healthy ones. I'm getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lapino was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides.
It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it.
He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lupino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost. The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato.
But what if Lupino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself.
Trust me, Renato, you won't regret this. I'll treat the core like it was my own baby daughter.
As the Farfarer dived towards the Nexus, Lupino was jumping up and down with excitement. "Stop rabbiting around," Renato said. Lupino just stared at him. The moment the ship landed, Lupino leapt off the ship.
As Lupino vanished into the wilds of the Nexus, Renato vaguely remembered Lupino had a baby daughter, didn't he? And he told her mother he was going out to get some Easter eggs, and he'd never come back. But Renato was relieved not to carry the core anymore. He was already feeling better. And who knows, maybe this time Lupino would get it right. And if Renato could take the outpost, he'd have access to all the Empire's communications in the sector. Right? You guys ever eat fresh food? You don't smell like it. Renato caught his breath. His joints still hurt, but he couldn't feel the poison in his system anymore. He'd let the armature slip out of his hands to save his friend Lupino. Of course he had to let Lupino take the core. The rebellion needed every man doing his duty. And the rabbit would be no good taking on an Imperial outpost, right? Renato took the outpost with a song in his heart. Soon, he was stuffing his sack with key messages from and to the fleet. Then the Farspeaker Toad chortled a new message. The observatory had been sacked by ravens. Lupino and all the scientists had been taken to the mountains. Why? Why had he trusted Lupino again? And now the Empire had the core. Renato hailed the rebel base to warn them. But their Farspeaker didn't crowd back. Was the base under attack too? Who knew what was going on at the base? But he knew what the ravens would do to Lupino if Renato didn't rescue him fast.
Well, actually, he wasn't exactly sure. It kind of depended on whether Lapino was a traitor or not. Renato just couldn't bring himself to believe that.
What are old friends for, if not to need rescuing every few days? Renato felt a twinge of doubt. Should he have gone to the base? No. Logically, wherever they'd taken Lapino was probably where they took the core, right? Oh, why couldn't Lapino have just, for once, not got himself captured? Was that too much to ask? He shouldn't be too hard on the rabbit. He meant well, and he was insanely brave. He had to admire that. Where were they holding Lapino anyway? There was no sign of him or the ravens who'd captured him. Just rocks and snow and the usual scouts. No sign of the core either. It was just a wild rabbit chase. Oh, trust Lapino to screw up even getting captured. But what was this rebellion for anyway? Well, Lapino was some useless goof. But he was a friend. If friends didn't matter anymore, what was the point of winning this war? Renato had heard stories of a dungeon where chests were filled with potions and weapons. Fairy tales. Thought about the intel he'd gathered from the outpost. Who did he bring it to? Who even had time to read it? At the end of the mountain path, Renato came to a clearing. There was a campfire, raven feathers, and... oh, Lapino's lucky deck of cards. Well, that wasn't good. Renato hoped Lapino had not tried to cheat his captors at cards. Ravens were much better than weasels at counting, and they had a very poor sense of humor.
Then, he saw what he had hoped never to see. Fresh scraps of rabbit fur. Ragged and bloody, ravens would eat anything.
By Grabthar's hammer!
Bernardo screamed at the sky.
I will avenge you!
The rebels had assembled their fleet. Ahead, the clouds were dark with Imperial ships. If he could reach the Emperor before the rest of the rebels did, maybe he could settle this without too much bloodshed. He set sail, and the Farfarer shot forward.
Poor Lapino had never been a great warrior. The mad rabbit was good for a lark and a laugh. And a pint. The thought of ravens eating him made Bernardo furious. The way they were eating up the land. The way the Emperor was eating up the people with his new, bloodthirsty ways. He would make them all pay.
A portal that led right into the middle of the fleet. It was a glaring weakness in the defense.
Every objective to save his friend. He'd given up the armature, the core, the gem, and even Zenobia. He loved Lapino, he realized. And now the rabbit was gone. A hero looks out for his friends, even when they're gone. He would send Lapino an honor guard of ravens to serve him in the halls of the Valiant. He would avenge him.
You guys actually tell each other apart? Because I'm thinking name tags.
Finally, he reached the Emperor's ship. And there was Lapino, surrounded by ravens. He was alive! They'd eaten some other rabbit. "I'll save you!" he shouted with joy and flung himself at the ravens. "Oh, you shouldn't have," said Lapino when the last raven was down. Renato threw his arms around his best friend. "I had to come. I love you, man." "You really, really shouldn't have," said Lapino. And Renato felt a rather sharp pain in his back. As he collapsed, Lapino took the dagger out of Renato's back and wiped it off on Renato's sleeve. "Why, you always have to be the hero. Brave Renato, epic Renato, super sexy Renato, and I'm sick of it." As Renato died, all he could think was, damn it, fooled again. Oh, again? But he already had all the secrets he needed. He was sure of that. He must have not used them the right way. What was the best, worst mistake he could make? Probably trusting that traitor Lapino. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. Faster than before? And he fell.
The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage.
Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause,
and maybe Renato could use that somehow.
Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time.
Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy, and that he had a clever plan.
If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse.
Or so Lapino had told him over the far speaker anyway.
Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens?
Someone need a bath. That was odd. Renato had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. This time, there were so many more ravens.
landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lapino. Well, unless he really was a traitor. Obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. Lapino would betray him. But now Renato knew that. What would Lapino do if he knew that Lapino was going to betray him? Well, he'd concoct a crazy scheme, wouldn't he? Use Lapino's betrayal against him and it would blow up in his face. Maybe he was overthinking this. Well, that would be a first. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in Sword Fu school. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. The rabbit had a point, and Renato had a feeling she'd want to see him again. Who knows what could happen between the two of them this time around? She knows all his plans, chuckled the master spy. She won't give them up easily. She'll tell the interrogators, all right, said Lapino. Taking her would change the game, all right. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. This was the nice part of town. But the Ravens had been through here. They like to take shiny things home to their nests. Was Lapino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously it was a trap. But you never knew how Lapino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lapino wanted. There must be some way to play on that, Renato thought. So, what's this plan of yours?
Use me as bait, said Lupino.
And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renardo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon.
What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renardo. Oh, go ahead. I'm sure you know better, said Lupino.
This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What's that all about, anyway?
Renardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She became smoke. And he noticed he had a blade to his throat. Stay a while, purred a familiar voice. Did you really think you could capture me? Zenobia said as her ship lifted off. Now I just wanted some privacy, Renardo said. Renardo knew she still had feelings for him. Maybe he could just cut to the chase. But was timing right for that? Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? And he told her why. His Imperial Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him immortal. To seal the bargain, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. You're lying. She was furious. You can't prove that. I can. And so, they set sail for the Nexus. The scientists at the observatory have resurrected one of his victims. Well, he's not exactly alive, but he can talk, and he can't lie. You took a big risk. You know, I could just cast a spell to make you tell me where the rebel base is, and you wouldn't consider that cheating? She frowned. Ugh, fine. Let's go get your witness. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renardo had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you want to join in? Oh, no, I'd destroy his books and... all right, I suppose I wouldn't. She stopped, troubled. He ran on. Scientists on this island had been investigating the Emperor's dark rituals on their own. They were neutral in the civil war engulfing the Empire, but they could see that the dark magics the old Toad had loosened were changing the world. Bernardo hoped he and Zenobia weren't putting them in danger. These were no ordinary cannonballs. For one thing, ordinary cannonballs were black. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared around, shocked. The scientists had been neutral. They had no part in the rebellion. "Take me to your council," she said, shaken. "I have things to tell them." It was what Renato had gambled on. The Zenobia would turn against her father once she knew his madness. But the rebel base was secret. Could he really risk taking the Emperor's daughter there, even if she did love him? Renato reached Lapino by Farspeaker Toad, the one creature the Ravens had left alive at the observatory. Lapino seemed awfully anxious to meet him at the secret base. If he was a spy for the Empire, he'd turn around and reveal the coordinates to the Empire, jeopardizing the entire rebellion. But Renato couldn't bear to think that Lapino would commit such horrible treachery. There was still good in the Mad Rabbit. He felt sure of it. "I'll meet up with you at the base," Lapino said through the Toad. "Good thinking." Renato gave him the coordinates. "There's a shuttle here I can borrow." Renato found Zenobia in the chart room. "I've been having awful dreams," she said. "Dead kittens and worse. I thought they were only dreams, you know. Why would anyone want the lost gods back? In those days, the favorite of a god could become immortal." She held herself and shivered. "He wants to become an eater of souls." "Well, I'm not afraid of dying. Just tired of boredom," Renato said, but she didn't laugh. Silence fell as they flew towards the ruins of the city of Ubar, where the rebellion leadership was hiding. If Zenobia couldn't help them fight off her father, no one could. As they touched the ground, he could smell the ravens and hear their hungry caws in the distance. "They're probably looking for me," she said. "You go on ahead." She had that fiery look in her eyes that he'd always loved. It was a bit odd, though. How easy she'd been to convince. It was what he'd gambled on, but he'd expected more of an argument. She'd always loved to argue. She considered it the fastest way to the truth. Maybe she'd long suspected the truth. Sometimes all it took was taking the bandages from your eyes. That must be it, he told himself. Hypatia had been the first woman who'd ever tried to convince Renato he was smart. He knew he wasn't nearly as clever as he thought he was. But she'd pushed him to think things through. She had a vision of him that was better than his own. Zenobia had really turned. The war could soon be over. She could send orders to the fleet that would leave their defenses wide open. The rebels could sail right in and capture the Emperor. Victory. Not too many casualties. They caught their breath under a ruined arch. "It's beautiful," she said. "This was the library of Ubar," he said. "Your father's ravens thought they had an ancient book." She nodded. Was she crying? This was exactly what I wanted, Renato thought. To turn her to our cause. So, why do I feel something is terribly wrong? Because nothing ever goes this smoothly, is why. You blinked. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
I don't have anyone to talk to.
The council toads swarmed around Zenobia. Shocked she was there. Shocked she had changed sides. Then the walls exploded. He heard toads croaking, "Oh, the ravens!" Blackbirds were pouring through holes everywhere. "It's a trap!" cried the council speaker. In the confusion, he saw flashes of magic. Then Zenobia being hustled off by Imperial troops. So, she had betrayed him after all. Renato ran for his ship. The Farfarer flew into the clouds, barely losing the Imperial ravens pursuing him. The rebellion was lost, and he had lost it. There was nothing to do but find Zenobia and make her pay for her treachery. Oh, his heart ached. He still loved her. But he had trusted her, and he had been a fool. She would be back at the fleet, gloating with her mad, bloodthirsty father. For all Renato knew, she was helping him bring back the old, lost gods back from their exile. Renato landed in the middle of the Imperial fleet. The rebels were losing badly. Without leadership, it was a slaughter. Renato felt strangely free. Trying not to think about how he had lost the war. Trying not to think about how he had loved Zenobia. Blinded himself to her treachery. That's what it meant to be a hero. To keep on fighting after the most bitter of betrayals. To never know if you can trust anyone. Yes, what a waste of fur.
Your brother.
What had happened to Lupino? Had the Mad Rabbit fled to safety? Or was he forlornly carrying on with the few rebels Renato could see here or there? It didn't matter anymore. All there was slash and spin, parry and lunge, over and over as he fought his way across the fleet. All there was finding the girl he'd once loved, who had used his love against him and putting as big a hole in her heart as she'd left in his. And suddenly, Zenobia was there, advancing on Lupino. So the Mad Rabbit had survived. "Save me, or I'm done for!" screamed Lapino. Zenobia turned, showing her teeth in a smile. "You're alive!" Renato ran towards the witch. "Lapino's the one who betrayed you!" she shouted. "He warned my father!" Before he could think, Renato sank his sword into the sorceress. She stared at him, heartbroken. "No! Lapino's the traitor!" Renato had an awful, sinking feeling in his stomach. Then, he felt a knife in his back. "I'm afraid she's right," said the Mad Rabbit. "Ain't I a stinker?" Then, the sun went out. Damn it. Oh, again? But he already had all the secrets he needed. He was sure of that. He must have not used them the right way. What was the best, worst mistake he could make? Probably trusting that traitor Lapino.